This is our second quarterly partner education webinar, and we're going to be focused on volunteer recruitment and retention. Basically, we're just going to cover volunteers, how you find them and how you keep them. So I'm obviously starting out the show here with a welcome and a bit of our purpose, and then I'll be handing it off to Devin McLaughlin. He is the PPC from Chemung and Tioga counties. He'll be talking about volunteer recruitment, and then he will pass it off to Sarah Keenan. She is the PPC, or Program and Partnership Coordinator, for Schuyler and Steuben counties. And then we will finish with some volunteer expertise and wisdom from Mary Caruso from the Corning Community Food Pantry, and a brief Q&A, potentially not brief, to be determined, where we all can kind of chat about what we learned and what we took away from this. So these are our FBST values. It should be a little bit more familiar. You've seen this now a couple of times, but just as a reminder, we're rooting these values in the work, and we want to see at least one of these values connected to any program or project that we're working on. And the idea is that this kind of serves as some guiding principles as we walk forward in the work that we're doing together. And these are our desired outcomes. Again, these should be looking a little bit more familiar to you. The folks at the food bank are really looking to focus on the idea of good food, increasing access to individuals who should be participating in our programs, but have for many different reasons not access to that yet, and strategic collaboration. And you've seen a little bit of that in action with our impact grants, and just being more intentional around how we're partnering and how we're moving the work forward. And again, you know, part of this webinar package is to strengthen agency capacity. So we heard from you, from our agency advisory committee, about, you know, what folks might want to talk about, what folks might want to learn a little bit more about. And these partner education webinars, the topics were what we heard back. So we're trying to bring a bit more information around this, and the intention is that the communication and kind of brainstorming will continue in your coalitions. Just to recap, we believe that the solutions in the community, you are the community, you know how to serve your folks best, and this kind of shifts the way that we improve our approach to service. And now I'm going to hand it off to Devin McLaughlin.
Hello, everybody. So here are our 4 buckets that are foundational to volunteer recruitment. Outreach and recruitment, training, culture and expectation setting, communication, recognition and inclusion, and succession planning. Here are some ways that you can do outreach. You can advertise your need through social media posts. Usually that just means Facebook. We have our listservs, which are Google groups. You can communicate with one another through that. It's not just for us to send announcements to you guys. You can utilize it yourselves whenever you have a problem that you want to brainstorm with people on. Outreach and presentation, we're going to talk about that at the next slide. Client involvement, if you know that you have people coming to the pantry that want to get involved, have them get involved. Schools, a lot of schools have requirements for community services, so you can always reach out to them. And local volunteer groups, you can research if there are groups in your area that volunteer. You can ask for specific projects, like maybe a spring cleaning day, or, you know, you need a new coat of paint or whatever you need. And I'm going to launch a little bit of a poll here too. Hopefully it'll pop up for you. Okay. Does everybody see that? Okay. So we got, it looks like 36% say social media is where they have the most success. 43% is client involvement, just 7% the schools, and 43% is local civic groups. So nothing from listservs. Okay. Okay, so localized volunteer strategies. While I'm talking here, you can please put in the chat places where you normally find volunteers from these too, if you have any specifics. You can reach out to your local civic engagement groups. We have AmeriCorps Seniors or RSVP, United Way, Rotary, Lions, Elks, and Moose, college volunteers and alumni groups. And you can always ask if you can present at an upcoming meeting as an opportunity to highlight areas of engagement. Not all counties have all these resources, but each one will have at least one of them. And we're going to get more into this at the next coalition meeting with some presentations from each group. And these are the focus on benefits of volunteering. Why should someone give their time? We need help only speaks to a subset. Instead, you can focus on what volunteers will gain, which is they'll make a difference. They can use your skills for talents and talents for good, meet others in the community, work for a cause you believe in, and just help others in general. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Sarah Keenan.
Thanks, Devin, for this slide to advance. So now, we've followed Devin's lead here and we've gotten all of your wonderful volunteers. You want to make sure you're able to keep them right and play to their strengths. In this slide, there's a lot of information here. We'll send this out as a resource after the webinar, but basically the crux of it is to just play to folks' generational strengths. Every generation is going to have a different way that they excel at communicating, reaching out to other people, talking to folks in the community. So, here's some suggestions based on just whatever buckets your volunteers fall into. Next slide. So this is kind of a flow chart that we came up with. I think that you can utilize as you're onboarding new volunteers with their training and expectation setting. So initially, when you start with a new person or a new group of people, you're going to conduct your orientation. And at that point, you want to communicate clear expectations of your values and the way that you approach service. You'd watch any orientation videos that you have or that maybe the food bank has shared that you find beneficial. Review the position description. It's always really good to have a nice job description that goes along with every role within your pantry to help outline what folks are going to be expected. Review volunteer policies and procedures, a tour of your site. You always want to introduce new volunteers to your crew. Obviously, if you're not available, you want them to be comfortable to come to someone with their questions. And also it just fosters a feeling of teamwork. You want to review your projects and your tasks and delegate and provide the right tools for the job. You want folks to succeed, so set them up to succeed with everything they need. Clear written directions, but also with demonstrations, and always try to be available. I think that's a really important one. Thank you. So this slide speaks to communication and inclusion with your volunteers. You want to make sure that you're valuing their time and contribution. And lead by example. Don't just delegate. Don't ask folks to do a task that you wouldn't be willing to do the work yourself. Be accessible. Have your next in line. Have folks available so your volunteers feel comfortable coming to you with any questions or concerns or ideas, suggestions. Always doing those periodic check-ins. I know from speaking to so many of you that this is in part one of the ways that you are so successful by valuing all the input from everybody involved in your organization. And recognition and avoiding burnout. I think over the past few years, we've all heard a lot about self-care, and we want to make sure that your volunteers are practicing that, and you are as well. And by recognizing the work that they're doing, saying thank you, obviously a culture of respect is going to make them feel good about the time that they're spending. It's a valuable resource, and we don't want to turn anyone away. So these are just some more examples. Let me see. Available for support, keeping workloads manageable, have fun, get to know your volunteers. I think the most successful sites we see are the ones that folks are having a good time while they're there.
Okay, and I have a poll to put up now too.
Thanks, Devin.
Yep. Okay, here it is.
So this one is, how have you recognized your volunteers over the past 2 years? If you could vote in that poll, thank you. So this looks like verbal recognition is the winner here. But some folks are having parties, or doing posts on social media, little notes of appreciation or gifts, gift cards. Those are all important ways that we can show our thanks to the folks who do this work. So building your bench is an important thing that I think we've talked about within the coalitions and within the food bank for years. It's very important work that we're all doing, but we can't do it all. You've got to make sure that you have folks that you can delegate to a next in line if you're ever to, run off to the beach or win the lottery and someone's got to fill your spot. This is important. It helps avoid burnout. You don't want too much on any one person's shoulders. So spread the work around. And our next quarterly webinar will be in August, and succession planning will be the topic of that webinar then. So stay tuned.
And at this point, we are going to invite Mary Caruso from the Corning Community Food Pantry to join us. Mary, if you could come off mute. That would
I did. Did I?
Yes,
No?
success.
Okay, good.
And so I'm going to ask Mary a couple questions to kind of speak to some of the issues that we covered in the slides previously. And Mary is going to let us know about her take on all of those. So Mary, the first question is, tell us about the top 3 most important aspects of your outreach and recruitment strategy.
So I think my top 3 would be social media. But seriously, that is top, that's key. And through social media, I mean, our website, as well as, I know we're on Facebook and we've started Instagram. We're looking into some of the other stuff that we thought only appealed to like young kids, like my son's age, like 13, 14-year-old, but all of that, all aspects of social media, even LinkedIn accounts. So I think that's like a springboard on just about everything that helps us, whether it's raising money, but also getting new volunteers. Communication comes out of that. We communicate we have an email list that we've generated from people that we've received information that they want information from us. They follow us, and we ask if we can have their email address. So communication through emails, and even just from a director's viewpoint, the whole idea of communication, even just with a cell phone. Like I can call up people and ask for their input on something, but sending a text is sometimes a little bit less invasive and much quicker. So even just doing it that way, and that would just be with current volunteers, because I usually don't text people until I know that they're going to be assigned to a certain project.
I was just going to say, it's interesting that you brought up kind of expanding your social media activity And I think the reason that it struck me is because we are trying to build, a new generation of volunteers. And so by engaging on these newer social media platforms, you will be kind of planting that seed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we've had groups from both colleges as well as high schools connect with us to see if they could do a certain, like a senior project or their junior year project with us. So that has helped to open our eyes that they want to be included in that. So, and we did a survey. I'm not sure whether it was through SurveyMonkey or not, but we discovered that there is a certain generation a certain pocket of people that we needed to appeal to. So, and I think that was through help with Mansfield College PR program. Like they connected with us, and this was something we had them investigate for us. So, but even in social media or even communication, just doing baby steps, 10 years ago, we weren't super savvy in in all of that. I don't think we were on Facebook until 2016, maybe 2017. But we had just started to do our webpage, and it has since evolved, and it keeps changing. We keep adding to that, and the person who coordinates that learning. So I think that's one thing. It was good for me to be able to have someone that focuses on that. So that's not something that I have to do. But baby steps, that's important. Some people can't do a web page, but they could do Facebook. So, anything is better than nothing at all. But yeah, I can't stress enough about connecting with the schools to see if the young people can help you in that area.
I will just take a moment to plug 2 more opportunities coming up. Our next 2 quarterly partner education webinars. As Sarah mentioned, we'll be covering succession planning, and a lot of that has to do with, building your bench and finding those strengths and being able to delegate as a way to kind of set the stage for that. And the other is we'll be working on social media and media in general for our final, 2022 webinar. And so we will be able to kind of walk folks through a little bit more about how you might set up a page, how to make a post, things like that. We'll try to get out ahead of that and ask folks, what they could benefit from. Okay, second question is, what are the actions that you take to ensure the recognition and inclusion of your volunteers?
So I think probably the most important thing is involving them in the decisions that I make, and helping them to understand, I want their input. I might still have to be the one that makes the decision, and it might not be in agreement with what they're all thinking or what each individual group might be thinking, but because ultimately someone does have to make a decision sometimes. But something to the effect of, we, for like a year and a half almost, we were all drive-through, and I wanted to transition us back into that. So I kind of put a note out there to certain folks on each of the days, and ask for people who would like to, like, which days would like to reopen the waiting room, go back to the former way of doing things. And we got some feedback on that, and we went from there. And little by little, we're opening up more and more. And there might come a time where those folks who still want to do the drive-through are going to have to open up the waiting room. But I think allowing them more of that decision, like when that's going to happen, and on what type of a basis, like how can we do that makes them more comfortable? Because I, as an individual, as a director, cannot run this pantry by myself. I need to have them there. Yeah. So, and I think including them in that. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing. And it's probably one of the most hardest as well, especially conveying that I might have to make a decision that's contrary to what you want. But I think it's for the best of the pantry. And then for us, we started doing like volunteer spotlights, especially throughout COVID. That was a pretty big thing. A lot of my volunteers, we had some step back, we had new ones step in. But that was a great way to connect with those ones who were at home, is they could watch and see, and maybe even see themselves. Like, it was all done virtually, all that recognition, and then it got posted on. So like a volunteer spotlight on social media, or even through an email. If you don't do social media like Facebook or that, but you have email lists of people that are interested in your pantry or donors, you send out an email and talking about, like, this is about Mary Caruso. Mary Caruso has been with the pantry, for 10 years, and you just give general information and just thanking them for their time. So I think that's good. But I was one of those ones who did notes of kindness. I think just a simple note, it doesn't have to be long, but it's something they can hold on to. I still have some of those, like from years ago, whenever I'm working a job that a boss has sent to me, thanking me for the extra effort I made. So something like that is important. And you go to when you're struggling, when you have one of those times, and we all have it, when a client's driving you crazy, or maybe even another volunteer is, and you open that back up again and you remember why you're doing what you're doing. So I think those are simple ways to kind of include them as well as recognize them.
That is great. Well, Mary,
I want to give a little, does it kind of relate? It doesn't really relate to what you asked me about, but I think it's really important. And it's a little bit about what the other Sarah was talking about when she was talking about secession, that I think it's important to, when we talk about volunteering, some people have certain ideals of how it's going to be, but no job is too small. And if it's one less thing you have to do, or even somebody else has to do, if you're trying to save the person who does social media a little bit of time by finding somebody to help them do all the posts for Facebook or all the posts for Instagram, that's nothing too small. I have someone who just sends out the emails, even just to my volunteers. Like, I prepare it and I send it on to Jenny, and Jenny takes care of it. And if anything gets sent back to her, she takes care of all that. Even phone calls for one event that we do a month, I have someone who does that. And that's a small thing, and that's something they can do from home, which I think is a great way to include those people who might have mobility issues but still want to help out. Like some of those, aging volunteers who can't do the movement, the can't lift the 20 pounds that they need to do in order to pack a bag. There are other ways. And I think giving away little parts of your job, or even just volunteering in general, I think helps you to not burn out and to succeed as a pantry.
yeah.
So
And
that's my
build your
little,
bench. Absolutely.
yeah, build your bench.
Yeah.
Find your joy, find what brings you joy outside of this. Even if you love it, we all love what we do, but you've got to find something that you can do outside of it, because we all need that a little bit of escape, because that kind of recharges you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mary. I really
Sure.
appreciate your time and your insight.
Sure.
All right. So again, this was a short webinar for us. We're at the end, but I feel like you all are experts in the work that you're doing, and I'm sure you have some things to add. You might have questions. So we're going to open it up for questions and comments. And if you could put that in the chat, then we will, follow along and call folks out, and you can unmute when we bring up your question or comment. And anybody from FBST as well who might want to hop in while people are warming up their chat fingers. It looks like Glenda has a comment. Glenda, do you want to come off mute and share your comment with us?
Yes, we have an annual project that we have here. And I get volunteers, a lot of volunteers for the project from Cargill, Salt from Cargill. And I know Cargill is in some of the other places, and they get credit for volunteering. And they love it because they're mainly underground most of the time, and they get to spend their time above ground. And we buy coffee and donuts and feed them lunch and give them some. It's called the Victory Garden, so we give plants to people we have a collaboration with Cornell. And so they take plants home, they love it, and it worked well. I think this is the 12th year we've done this with
Mhm.
Cargill. So that might be a place for some people. I think Cargill is in Watkins Glen and that area.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too, because I know there are other organizations or corporations that pay their employees to volunteer. And I know down in Kathleen's area, is it Visions? I believe they,
Yep, it is
Yep.
Visions Credit Union.
yeah. So I think every county has some sort of model like that where you can look to a kind of a corporate volunteer opportunity and leverage that as well. So that's great, Glenda. Thanks for bringing that up. Mary says Corning Inc. does a similar thing. That's correct. Yep. Nice egg. Thank you, Bridget. Yeah, and I guess I should point out that I know Devin mentioned this, but we are inviting some of the more localized volunteer and civic partners to your coalition meetings. So we're hoping that this conversation or some brainstorming on a more local level will kind of come at the coalition. We're working on inviting more folks. I know we have some United Ways, some RSVPs, some college representatives. Basically just invited them to talk about the potential opportunity. And in some ways, some of those organizations kind of can do the legwork for you a bit around screening volunteers or best fit and really figure out what your need is so that a volunteer can come and fulfill that need specifically. And then that kind of takes some of the workload off of you, which you're already doing quite a bit of work. So any other comments or questions around volunteering or appreciation, inclusion? That's great. Yeah, Bridget says that NYSEG not only provides incentives for the employee, but they also give our pantry monetary donations. Anyone else have any advice for their peers around volunteers in general? Again, this is kind of a to be continued conversation that you all will pick back up during your coalition meetings. So next webinar is on succession planning and media. So hopefully we'll be able to share a little bit more information and some resources, and we will be sharing out the slides, the recording, as well as the handout that was very text heavy about kind of leveraging generational strengths. And Bridget, you had something to add as well?
Yeah, I have been running into the issue of a saturation of people wanting to volunteer. Over the holidays, it was around 250 people that wanted to volunteer. There's just no way to be able to accommodate that level. So it's difficult to say we can't utilize you, maybe at a future point. So I guess if anyone has some suggestions as to how to gracefully say we can't use your services right now.
Well, I can take a crack at it, and then I see Mary also has her hand raised. So what I would say is, I know that you have a lot of deliveries, and that could be some way to leverage people. And I know you have big plans. So I think, you have your solid crew, but maybe the potential is to build your bench in a way that allows for you a little bit more respite. And 200 some odd people, that's too many volunteers. I would say, we see this across the board where people really want to do something during the holidays. And I think that we could work on an internal narrative to share within our agencies about that need being ongoing throughout the year. And how to kind of make it a positive opportunity to say, I'm so glad you reached out over this winter holiday. Come visit us in March. We would love for you to please volunteer with us in March, and happy holidays. But I think that could be something that we talk about as, coalitions, as the agency advisory I want Mary to speak to that because I think that she has some advice. And then I think Amanda Palmy might have some advice as well.
Right. So I think first off, I have, I don't receive that many people at one time, but there was a time whenever I was getting lots of emails from people. So I developed, like, as you say, almost like a little tag that I could type in, and I memorized it. And a lot of it just, stated, thanks for reaching out. One key thing I think is important is, we currently, thanks for reaching out, and, or your interest in, Corning Community Food Pantry. We currently don't have needs for volunteers right now, but our needs are constantly changing. I think that's because that's true. Like, I might have my schedule set for the month, and, someone might tell me we're moving. We just sold our house, we're moving, boom. Like, and I need availability on that Tuesday for the rest of the month. So not that I need 200 people to pull from, but I think having that set phrase so that you still have that, and you have that person, you can go back to that email and pull that up. And I've also used the line that, our schedule, because I get a lot of high school students that are like trying to get all their hours in for National Honor Society or whatever. And I explain to them, I make my schedule up well in advance. So, if I have need of if there's a cancellation, I'll give you a call. But right now, you need to connect with me. How about April? Or, right now I'm saying, what does your summer look like? What day would be available? So you need to split the decision, have somebody, one of your current volunteers that's pretty good with that, being able to answer some of those emails or phone calls or whatever, or give that information to them, and just have a pat response. I also think it's important, if you're getting phone calls like that, to have them send to an email address, because paper slips get lost, but and things can get deleted off your voicemail. But I think having an email, it's almost like a paper trail or a virtual trail that you can go back to see that, and you can also hand that over. So those would be my suggestions. Get your pat response, just like Sarah was mentioning, but don't say no thank you, but say not now. We'd love to connect with you back again, at this time. So, and put it back on them. I've had that experience where people have not gotten back to me. So they really just wanted it for that, that week or whatever. But that's what I would do. And you can't respond to everybody.
And
You just
I would
can't.
also say, I think Devin mentioned this earlier, but in my former job, I would schedule bigger and more different volunteer opportunities for those folks who don't want to regularly volunteer, but would like some sort of seasonal one-off. So like every season we would have a beautification day, or like a cleaning day, or take everything out, clean everything, put it all back in, so that it does give people an opportunity to engage, and maybe they have that one-off experience and then they want to come back because they enjoyed themselves so much and they're kind of surprised by it. So they didn't know that they wanted to commit, but now they do, because they've engaged with you and they see your organization and its operation and its impact. So that's been really successful too, just to, try to get every type of volunteer / worker, and then also make sure that it's not like, well, you have to commit to Tuesdays every Tuesday, so that you can kind of open up the opportunity for everyone.
One of the, as I'm approached by many clubs, classes, organizations, where I'm going now is not necessarily, the community. What is community? And so one of my first project outside of Food Pantry is planting plants for bees and butterflies. So that's the direction I think we have to go. We don't have the ability to have a lot of volunteers here.
Right.
So that's where I'm expanding. And I think, during the holidays, that is the people want to, that's when people jog their memory. I want to go give back. I always hear, but I want to expand it to more than just to give back does not mean go hand out food.
Right. And I think you're on the right track there too, because you do have like some spatial capacity. You can't get a large group in your space, but you could do some like larger projects and expand people's concept of community service. So I think that's good. And I think Amanda has her hand up as well.
Hi, everyone. I do. I just want to say thank you to Mary Caruso and for sharing your tidbits today. And also, I want to pick up where Mary was talking and Bridget, you guys are on the right track. And I'm really excited to see everybody carry this conversation on over into the county coalition meetings, because you all are a cohort that can brainstorm together multiple ideas. This idea of volunteer sharing, if you are at full capacity, saying, hey, my neighbor down the road could use some volunteers. Let's get in contact. You all are a network and you all are able to communicate together, especially through those Google groups. I think another thing is that we can help you get organized. Sorry, my dogs, there must be monsters outside. We can help you get organized in scheduling and keeping track of what volunteers are scheduled for which distributions, and actually mapping that out through the year so you can see, oh, I see in November, people are going on vacation. They're going to families' homes outside of the area. I'm going to need some extra help. Let's reach out to those schools that may have seniors who have community service requirements to graduate. Lots of opportunities here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. And Sarah, you had your hand up as well.
My thought was kind of what Amanda had just touched on, like a lot of what we do here doesn't really require volunteers because of the nature of our pantry. But I have been trying to reach out to other organizations and say, hey, I have 6 students that need to do a thing. Do you have 4 hours for them?
Mm-hmm.
And then I know like there's been times where other pantries have needed help and they'll reach out to me saying, hey, do you have, however many people that are willing to help? So that's kind of, community colleges are for the community, right? Like that's kind of the world that I live in. And I want to make sure that like, we're here if you need help.
Right.
More than anything. And I think that kind of has bolstered our relationship with members and services throughout our community, is just being like, hey, this is kind of the situation we have. And I really hope that in some way we can help each other.
And I would just kind of piggyback off of that. We had a high school student over the holiday who wanted to do something. And again, we're booked. People have this planned out well in advance. But you can always say, how about you research hunger in whichever county you live in and make 5 social media posts that like you might not necessarily have the bandwidth to do, but then they could prepackage that and send it to you. You could give them feedback or you could take what you get, but then you would have, some social media posts that you have in the canon and you could shoot out fairly easily. So there's always kind of a way, and we're happy to think through utilizing an overabundance of volunteers or leveraging new populations of volunteers for sure. There's a reusable bag drive. I like that. I think that was Mary's suggestion and Amanda built on it. Raised.
It is. I just have one last thought that I'm not sure if it was said, it may have been, but just to reiterate it, if it was already said aloud, if you are putting out a call for volunteers or a request, don't say, hey, we need help, we're running low, because that tends to put a negative, dire need lean on the conversation. Advertise it like you would something awesome, because this is awesome. Share what people are going to get out of it, not what you need from them necessarily. Say, are you looking for a way to give back to your community? Are you looking to spend time with a family member doing something engaging with the community? Find that positive spin that's going to be attractive to the people that you want to bring in as volunteers and sell it.
Yeah.
People want to
definitely.
work, they want to help, but sometimes they feel less likely to say, I'm here to help if it sounds super dire.
Yeah, it's definitely worth reiterating that point for sure. Thank you, Amanda. All right, well, if no one else has anything, again, if you do come up with something after we say goodbye, we are always ready for you at the coalition. So we look forward to seeing you there. If anything should come up regarding volunteers, my email is in the chat, and you can also reach out to your PPCs, your programs and partnerships coordinators, and they're happy to talk about this potential opportunity with you as well. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. It looks like it was a pretty short webinar as we expected, but hopefully it was useful, and we love seeing your faces. So thanks for joining us, and have a great day. Oh, and that's the thank you slide. Oops. Watch. For those of you who are still here, lovely flowers dropping from the sky.